Nigel Farage. You know him as the former UK Brexit leader and GB News host. Nigel, thank you so much for joining us here. And big news out of your campaign to stop banks from practicing mind control. British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has said the government is going to crack down on this sort of debanking activity. Have a listen to this.
It wouldn't be right if financial services were being denied to anyone exercising their right to lawful free speech. Our new Financial Services and Markets Act puts in place new measures to ensure that politically exposed persons are being treated in an appropriate and proportionate manner. And having consulted on the payment services regulations, we are in the process of cracking down on this practice by tightening the rules around account closures.
Nigel, thanks so much for joining us. You must feel vindicated by that, but does this legislation go far enough?
Oh, I'm delighted. I mean, it's not often that British Prime Ministers, James, come out in support of me, as you might have noticed over the years. So, yeah, the reaction has been rapid. The words used have been really quite forceful and delivered by Rishi with a certain degree of energy. All of that is good. What it means, of course, is that the regulator needs to enforce those rules. And one of the problems here is that the woke agenda has so overtaken our corporate banks, but I suspect the regulator too, that we may just need to keep the pressure on. So all of that is great. But what is even bigger, I think, the announcement by Australian banks last week that cash withdrawals and cash deposits will be limited to 500 Aussie dollars. The announcement here in this country that NatWest Bank, with 19 million customers, will, from September the 11th, be limiting the amount of cash you can put in and take out. And my real fear is debanking, because of political views, could be the absolute tip of the iceberg. Because if we finish up in a cashless society, that means banks and governments and regulators can control our spending. They could even put personal carbon limits on all of us. So my war with the banks has now broadened out onto several fronts.
Well, it does sound like it's a pretty Orwellian dystopian sort of scenario that you're talking about there, where the banks could actually control our behavior. And we know from the COVID pandemic how close corporations and governments can wind up getting together, don't we?
Well, absolutely. And already we've got banks in Britain. I mean, let's say you wanted to put some money every month into a firm called Coinbase. They are a registered, regulated body, and you go through Coinbase, for example, there are others, to buy cryptocurrencies. We've now got banks telling customers, oh, no, you can't do that. So already banks are beginning to control the way we spend money. If I was to go to the bank now, and withdraw £1,000 in cash, they'd ask me, what's it for? Now, I'd be tempted to tell them where to go, but if I did that, they'd probably close my account down. So we're seeing control, and we often debate, cancel culture and people being kicked out of universities and whatever it is. The ultimate form of cancel culture is to take people out of the financial system to make them non-people. I think we all need to be very aware of this.
Yeah, no, look, it's very, very sinister stuff, Nigel. I remember seeing the Canadian truckers who were debanked during their protests. But I want to talk about a guy who you think is possibly the remedy to all of this, Donald Trump, your mate. Now, we've had all these scandals with the Bidens. They're trying to get Donald Trump. But tell me about who you think Donald Trump should choose as his vice president. I think it's an interesting choice. Tell us about him.
Yeah, look, I mean, Trump is going to win the nomination to be the Republican candidate. That's end of, it's done. But in Milwaukee, on the 23rd of this month, there'll be a debate with all of the other hopefuls. So they'll all be running to try and win the presidential nominee position, but none of them will get it. So it almost becomes a contest, I think, as to who Trump might pick as his vice president. There is a 37-year-old, self-made businessman, born in the Midwest of America, to Indian parents, called Vivek Ramaswamy. And he is a complete breath of fresh air. No political baggage. And he's the one saying, critical race theory, Black Lives Matter, all of these things are being done to destroy America. The woke agenda that has moved through the corporations, all of these things are destructive to America, destructive actually to the entirety of the Western world, and he wants to try to restore the idea of the American dream. And what that means is supporting the little guy, supporting the little man, the little woman who want to set up and get on in the world and not live in a country dominated by big business, big banks, and big government. And I think he comes into this with no political baggage. I've met him. I've spoken extensively with him on the phone. And look, it's a bit like trying to pick the winner of the Melbourne Cup 6 months out. You know, he may not perform on the debate as I think, but I would suggest people look at him because I think this is where conservatism in all of our countries needs to go. It needs to be about the freedom of the individual.
Nigel Farage, I agree with you. I've been following Vivek Ramaswamy for a while. I've been trying to get him on the U.S. Report, which appears every Friday night at 8 p.m., so hopefully he'll watch this and come on the U.S. Report. Nigel Farage, thank you so much for your time.